Thank you so much. I appreciate. I want to start us off with the session for today. I'm a certified fundraising executive. I'm also a grant proposal writer. I actually don't like calling myself an expert, but I'm a grant proposal writer and a trainer. I am a fundraising strategist. That means I support organizations to come up with strategies, to think through their strategies. I'm a social impact speaker. If you have a function and you'd want me to speak about fundraising, about raising resources, I'm in. I'll be happy to come and support you. I'm an author of a book called The Basics of Fundraising, which I shared with you. Very basic book, especially very good for startup organizations. So for those who are startups here, I think it's a book. If you've not already read, please make sure you read. You have the copy of the book. And I'm the founder of Real-Time Insights, an organization that we do, or rather, we use it as a vehicle to do our consultancy work, where we craft customized fundraising strategies for organizations. We craft compelling grant proposals. And I know many of you are here because of proposals, but as you know, that's a topic for tomorrow. So you will bear with me for today so that we go through step-by-step process. We do capacity building like what we are doing today. We do reviews of proposals and reports for compliance. And we also do comprehensive fundraising capacity assessments for those who may be interested. And that slide just shows some of the achievements that we had last year. We were able to work with a number of organizations raising up to 13 million USD with a proposal success rate of 83%. But we said that this is really dependent on many factors, like you realize as we go ahead. Fundraising is a team approach, so you can't really take the credit by yourself. But this is to show you that when we work as a team, when we know that we have a clear strategy and we know what we are doing, then we are likely to get good results. So to start us off for today, we are going to look at basically what we'll be talking about is to help you appreciate the fundraising infrastructure or the systems. What do you need to have? You're going to also take some time and look at how do you identify and qualify your donors. And then we look a little bit on relationship building. Okay. Now, I like starting here with something I call, or the model that is called the iceberg model. And I shared a video with you, for those of you, I shared with everyone a video on perspectives. And in this video, I actually introduced this model. So I want to believe it's not very new, assuming that we listened to the video in the first place. But anyway, the iceberg model is a model that I find very useful in everything. You can apply it in your life in many different scenarios. And it reminds us that when we look at an iceberg, I know they are not very common in our settings, but I think you can imagine an iceberg in water. What you see is only 10% of the iceberg. And the 90% of the iceberg is usually under the water. So the thing is, most of the time, we tend to see our problems, which is just 10% of the problem. And then we react to the 10%, forgetting or ignoring the 90% of the problem or the root causes of the problems. What is actually supporting what you can see? What is causing the problem? So in a nutshell, without going into details, I think I explained it quite in details in the video. In a nutshell, it is helping us to think we need to stop reacting to the 10% that we can see, but we need to go deeper and see what is causing the 10% that we can see. And so what I did is to try and apply it in our fundraising, in fundraising, how do we apply the iceberg? And in fundraising, you'll see we want to, at the end of the day, secure funding. We want to have sustainable projects. We want to have greater impact with our work. That is the 10% that we all see, is what we can see. And so when we are not seeing this, we tend to get stressed. But for us to get to this point, then we need to work on what is underlying, what really resorts to this kind of, or what influences this kind of results. It is the patterns. And for me, the patterns, it is the strategic activities that we implement. It is the strategic activities around donor identification, around donor qualification, around donor cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship, things that we will cover before the end of these 3 days. So if you have the right strategic patterns, strategic activities, then you are likely to end up with the right results or what you are desiring to achieve. Now, but for you to really think about or to be able to implement these strategic activities, you need to have a very strong foundation, your underlying structures, your systems. You need to have systems that enables you to implement your activities. So which are these systems? We are looking at your mission. You need to have clarity. In the nonprofit sector, mission is everything. Everything you do should be guided by your mission. Every decision you make should be guided by your mission. So you need a very clear mission that guides you in your activities, in everything. You need to have then a strategic plan. And when I talk about a strategic plan, depending on your level of organization, you could have a 50-page strategic plan or a pager. If you're starting, you don't need 10 pages. So it doesn't matter. The idea is you need to know what are your key pillars, what are your key strategies, which areas do you really want to focus on? And I see this mistake of having so many areas, focusing on so many things. An organization starts and it just does everything. It is in education, it is in economic empowerment, it is in youth, in violence, it is in sexual reproductive health. It makes you, especially when you start, it makes you lose your focus. You need to be known for something and do it well. You need to think of not being everywhere, but what is it that you can do and do it really, really, really well. Irrespective of the fact, I know we are coming from societies or from communities with a lot of needs. And so we have this urge to want to respond to every problem. But I think the reality is if you really want to be successful, you need to be a little bit strategic. You need to have a fundraising plan. I'll share this on day 3. How do you develop a plan? A basic plan. If you are very basic, you just need, if you're starting, you just need a very basic plan. If you, of course, depending on your size, you can have an elaborate plan. But at bottom line, you need to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, you have no direction. So we need to have some of these structures. We need to have human resources. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We need to, because you can't implement by yourself. You need a team. You need to always think, even as you're starting, when you're alone, you need to be thinking, I need to build a team. You need to have evaluation systems, fundraising culture. We need to have ways of connecting with our external environment and our stakeholders. And we need to have operational requirements, your policies, your accounting systems, and all that. So because without this, then it's going to be very hard to implement your strategic activities. So this is important, irrespective of your level. It is important to have it at the back of your mind and to work towards. No one is perfect. We are always working towards building something better. So we need to have this understanding. And the other aspect is what we call the mentor models, or what is our perspectives about, for example, in this case, about fundraising. What are your beliefs? What do you believe around fundraising? Because the stories we tell ourselves determines the structures we put in place, and the structures we put in place determines our strategic activities, and of course, the strategic activities determines our events. And I hope if you can get this right, and I think it's something that we can apply in everything that we do. So our mentor models becomes very important. How we perceive fundraising, how we look at fundraising, and I'm going to be giving you ideas. Some of us are feeling like it is too much. We need to appreciate it's a noble, activity. It's an activity that is helping us to achieve our mission. So we have to embrace it as something that we have to do. I know a number of you want to outsource that component of fundraising, but we have to embrace it. It's part of our institutions. It's like saying you're going to outsource your M&E company. As much as you may outsource some things, but it has to be part and parcel of your organization. So I hope that helps us to set the pace. So in terms of fundraising perspectives, we're looking at having empowering beliefs. Especially people who are starting, you find they start feeling like they're beggars. They start feeling like this is too much. So you have to keep reminding yourself it's an activity that is important in your organization. It's understanding the essence of fundraising as an activity that really helps us to achieve our mission. It is about helping us to forge meaningful relationships, to have greater impact. It is beneficial to both to you as an organization as well as the donor. I think one of the challenges is that we have always viewed ourselves as the beneficiaries when we are the receiving end. The person who is granting you the money seems to be the one on top of you, and then you are here down. We know that seems to be the situation, but we are doing a lot of advocacy to try and see how we can balance. But at the end of the day, you have to appreciate, even you being there, you are helping, even when you are the receiver, you are helping the donor to achieve their goal. They have a mission as well. They have a mission to achieve, and they cannot achieve without you. So it is beneficial to, everyone, to the beneficiaries, to you as an organization, to the donor. So it's a noble activity at the end of the day, and we need to just appreciate it. And I think here we do appreciate it. In terms of fundraising infrastructure, this slide was just to what I was talking about, to just enhance that. But just to note, one of the things that in the survey that we did, 87% of the organizations here do not have a fundraising plan. And so this justifies why we will take some more time to come up with to show you how to come up with a fundraising plan. So planning is key. I think I don't need to overemphasize that. Planning is key. Without planning, you will not be able to, really move forward. Human resource, we've talked about it. Professional development. One of the main questions I get from you is, especially when you are starting, how do I don't have the human resource to do the work. We of course appreciate, like any other, even a business, you start at most of the time when you are alone. It's lonely, it's tough, it's not easy. But then you must always remember you need to have a team. You cannot be successful if you don't have a team. So you will start probably with you and maybe a co-founder and volunteers to start with, but you need a team. Maybe your board members. Actually, your board members are your starting team. And so you need to also make sure you have a team of people that are supporting you as you're starting before you can be able to hire a professional team. So getting the right skills in your board becomes very essential when you're starting. And then as you grow, you keep making, adding stuff, because when it's important, like, you need to have an evaluation team, you need to have a fundraising team. As you grow, you just need to be aware you need a team of people. Evaluation systems, there must be a way of sharing your success in one way or another. Please make sure you're sharing your success. Fundraising culture is all about having everyone having a shared purpose, having collaborations, empowering your team to be one. Connecting with the external environment is about visibility. You have to be findable. That's what we say. You have to be found somewhere. You have to be visible through your storytelling, through your social media platform, through the website. You have to be findable somewhere. And of course, you need the operational requirements. So I'm not going into the details of this. It's just an overview, like I said. But what I will do, I'll share with you a checklist. I call it a checklist that you can be ticking, and it will take you time, perhaps, especially if you're starting, but a checklist that you can keep checking and seeing, I think I need to strengthen this component of my organization. I need to strengthen this other component. So we will share that checklist at the end of this. Or to summarize our perspectives and our structures, I think this is one of them, an infographic, but it really helps us to appreciate what fundraising is all about. I like wrapping up with this. Fundraising is not about money. I know you'll tell me it's about money, but fundraising is not about money. This is not my ones, by the way. There's a lady called Benson, Benson, I'll remember her name. She's the one who came up with this. She's very active in LinkedIn. Please follow her. You learn a lot from her. And she gives this perspective. Fundraising is not about money. Money is the byproduct of your relationships, your sense of belonging, which is basically your mission, volunteering, the people who are volunteering, your board members and all that, because they help you to form a team that can deliver. It is as a byproduct of events, the events that you are running, the events that take you out there, make you visible, that help you to raise resources. It is as a result of your excellence. And excellence for me is about chasing your mission. It's about knowing, it's about bringing change in the community. Fundraising is the money is a byproduct of your research. I'll demonstrate to you in a short while that research is it's a component that cuts across in all the fundraising, in our fundraising cycle. you're always researching when I talk of research, I mean, you're always wanting to find out, for example, what are the new innovations? You want to know, how do I communicate to my donors? So you're always continuously researching new donors, researching what are their interests. So there's a lot of research in fundraising. Innovation, of course, the more innovative ideas you have, the higher chances of getting funding. Your campaigns, do you run campaigns? Do you, are you out there asking people, running appeals, asking for help, saying what you're doing? So campaigns are important as a result of your impact. And when you look at that circle, impact relationships are very high. The highest share comes from there. So if you want to really improve your fundraising, in short, focus on your relationships, focus on your impact, focus on your campaigns, and all these other things that we've talked about. Many people call me, and many times you're asking for a proposal to write. And I always ask, are you able to demonstrate impact? If you cannot demonstrate impact, it is hard for you to raise resources, especially actually in all ways. And so the thing is, you have to, there's a strategy. You start by building yourself as an organization when you're starting. Then you go to building your portfolio. And then you ask yourself, which strategies work best for me? And I'll look into more details tomorrow. I'm actually digressing. But then we look at what strategy works for me. And I never place grant writing down here. It's always a little bit high. Because by the time you're getting grants, like I keep saying, you must have very strong structures. You must have very strong, a lot of impact, must be able to demonstrate impact. But then again, for those who are already there, then you have to ask yourself, how do you sustain these grants? Because grants, as long as you're depending 100% on grants, you're also not going to be sustainable. So there's a lot that which we'll discuss tomorrow about solicitation of funds. I actually digressed. So I just wanted you to appreciate this. Fundraising is not, don't run after the money so much. Run after, building your systems, relationships, your impact. I know there's controversy about the one byproduct, and someone saying when you call it a byproduct, it means like it's not a big thing. But I think for me, it gives the essence. It's as a result of this. It's as a result of your impact, your campaigns, your innovation, that you're going to get money. So I hope that is clear. We have a saying by Kevin. Again, Kevin is if you're a fundraiser, please make sure you're following Kevin on LinkedIn. And he keeps saying, to get funding, make sure that you are fundable and you are findable. Fundable, basically, you have the structures that you've been talking about. All the structures you've talked about, you're fundable. And then you are findable. You can be found somewhere. You're on websites, someone can really find you somewhere. I think you get it. You're on social media, you are doing events, you are visible. So visibility becomes very key. All right, and I think with that, I want to wrap up that section and go to now the strategic activities. Remember, we started with our mindsets down here. And then once we change our perspective, once we appreciate that fundraising is not about running after money and every call for proposal responding to it, it's not about that, then we build on our structures. Once we build on our structures, then we'll be able to implement our strategic activities. And our strategic activities are informed by the fundraising cycle, which I want to share. I know could be a repetition for many of you, but allow me to just take everyone step by step, just so that all of us appreciate this. Now, the fundraising cycle if you Google, you'll find all types of fundraising cycles. But for me, I summarize it in 4 main phases, which I think if you understand and follow, you're going to have an easier, it is easy to understand. So the first cycle is identification, is about donor mapping and research, which we are going to be looking at today. And it's about finding the best match donors, the donors that are likely to fund your work. That is the first phase. Once you go through the first phase, you identify the donors that are likely to fund your work. Then you move them to cultivation stage. So we are not going to cultivate and build relationships with everyone, or rather our focus is not going to be on everyone. We are going to focus on organizations or on donors, whether individual corporates, whether foundations, whether bilateral donors, we are going to focus on donors who meet a certain criteria. Those are the ones we have identified. They meet a certain criteria, then we cultivate relationships with them. So we engage them, we build understanding. There are many strategies that we'll be looking at on cultivation. Now, once we cultivate these relationships, we then now move to the next stage of solicitation. I know it looks like just something you do together, but at any particular time in an organization, you are different donors at different levels. So solicitation is where now we are making our ask. We are asking donors to support our mission. This is where we are writing proposals. This is where we are doing our events. This is where we are running monthly programs. We are doing different campaigns that we'll cover tomorrow. Solicitation. Then the other phase is what we call stewardship, which we're going to cover on Thursday. Another very important, extremely important aspect. Because even if you get money and you do not manage it well, if you do not deliver the promises, you know, at the end of the day, you lose a lot because it is very expensive to acquire donors. So you can imagine after all the process and then you lose a donor because you did not deliver, then it becomes such a negative thing. You lose your credibility, your accountability, and it becomes very difficult to get more resources. So stewardship, extremely important, and I've seen also in my experience, this component is often not really taken care of. And so you find you are always looking for new donors because you got donors, you do not deliver, then now they're not interested in your work. And then now you start looking for, so you're always in the cycle of looking for donors. And on that day, you will learn that you need to retain, you need to have, for those with donors, you need to put strategies for retaining your donors. So your phases will really depend on the level that you are at this point. For example, if you're starting an organization, you could be more of focusing on identification. But general rule is that we really need to spend a lot of time on cultivation if we want to bring on board new donors. So we posed this question, it was in the survey, have you ever conducted a donor mapping exercise? And interestingly, 84% of us have actually not conducted a donor mapping exercise. So I almost want to believe you have. It's just that perhaps you did not give it the name, because I don't think you'd be in this space if you've never really conducted a donor mapping exercise. But let's look at what is donor mapping. So basically, donor mapping is the process of finding out donors whose vision and mission are in alignment with yours. In this meeting, you'll hear me talking a lot about alignment with vision and mission, because fundraising is really pegged on your mission. So that needs to be very clear always. Even when you are identifying your donors, it's a process of seeing which donor really aligns with your mission and vision. Who is this donor who can really appreciate my work? Because then it becomes very easy to connect. So that's a process that we call the donor mapping. And there's a lot of research basically around donor mapping and research, as we call it, because we are trying to really get a lot of details about this donor, these prospects. So how do we go about conducting a donor mapping exercise? Okay, so this slide first shows us the role of research. I think I mentioned the role of research in every stage of your fundraising. Let me help you appreciate this. So like we've said, a recap, we have the four main phases of fundraising. We have the identification, the cultivation, the solicitation, and then we have the stewardship. But for this one, I've broken it into 5. We have the donor identification, which basically identification phase, and also I added a level called qualifying donors. It's still part of the identification, but I just wanted to bring out the aspect of research. So when you're starting your donor mapping, you'll start, first of all, by mapping out who is likely to fund your work. So you develop a list. So this could be a list of individuals, depending on the program that you are working on. It could be a list of individuals, it could be a list of corporates, you could have a list of foundations. And I want to encourage us to look at individuals as donors, because I know in our setup, we are always thinking of grants. I'm hoping one of the perspectives that will change, something that will shift, is to appreciate that donors is a broad term, that it's not about grants always. So you come up with a list. So let's say you've decided, I'm starting, so I probably just want to focus on corporates, or I just want to focus on individuals. So you develop a list. Once you develop a list, then you qualify this list. You qualify using something we call the LEA criteria. I'll share about it. So in the first level, you'll be researching about anyone whose mission seems to be similar to yours, like-minded organizations, but maybe they're at a higher level, international organizations that you want to partner with. So you're looking at anyone who is in your space. So if you're in education, you're really looking into the education. But then we move a step further and do more research to see who really qualifies, who is really qualified to be a donor, who really meets our criteria. Now, if they meet our criteria, I'll share with you the criteria that we use. So you could have a list of 100 people, but how many people really meet your criteria? Maybe only 30. And then out of these 30, you could look at how many people do you want to, or how many organizations, or how many donors do you want to focus on to cultivate relationships? Maybe you could end up with a list of 20 that are open to, kind of discussions. Perhaps you wrote an inquiry email and they were positive. So you could end up cultivating relationships maybe with 20. And then, so at the point of cultivation, you are researching about how to engage these people, how to engage these donors. At the end of the day, donors are people. So whether it's a foundation or whatever, there are people who are dealing with it. So you're always doing some research. And then you need to do research on how to solicit funds from them. How do you make the ask? Is it through a grant? Is it through maybe an appeal? At what point do you ask? Maybe there's a season when they give grants, there are seasons when they do not. So you need to understand their grant cycles. So this is just to show you, there's a lot of research. So you could end up again with maybe only 15 donors that you want to pursue for solicitation of funds. And maybe out of these, only a few are going to fund you. And then you end up with probably 10 that are going to engage. So what this really helps us to do, to understand, is you start with a broad number of donors as your prospect, and that's why the exercise of donor mapping is an exercise you need to engage your stakeholders. You need to call your board members, you need to call stakeholders, different people, and sit down and conduct a donor mapping exercise. Because you want to have a big, broad base, because as you can see, you see the way the pyramid, it gets narrower as you go up. So you could even have a list of 100 and end up with just 5 people if you follow through the process keenly, and if in the first place you identify the right kind of donors who are likely to fund you. So this is how the process looks like. So first you define your goal and your scope. So what do you want to achieve? What do you want to achieve based on your mission? Like I said, the biggest challenge is that we are not, many times we tend to be guided by what is available in the market. The calls for proposals that we see is what is guiding us to think about our work. But we want to take a step back and ask ourselves at the start of the year, what do we want to achieve this year? At times you need to think, assuming there was even no grants, what can we do? What can we do? So once you have a very clear plan, maybe this year, based on your strategic plan, based on your mission, we want to feed 3,000 school-going children. A very simple example. Then you focus now your energy on this for this year. This year, I just want to do this. Focus your energy on that. So define your goal first. Then now when we are looking to feeding 3,000 children, now you ask yourself, who is likely to fund this mission? Who can support us? Who is going to hear our story? So if you are, and this is especially when you're a startup, you want to be very focused because you want then to look for very specific donors who are interested in this program. This could be just one program. You do the donor mapping for it. Then you could have to sit down and do another, depending on your goals and how big you are. You could then identify another one and do a mapping for that. So it's not like it has to be one exercise. You can break it depending on your different goals. So let's say you said you want to feed 3,000 children. So who is likely to be interested in this kind of work? Then you now sit down with your stakeholders. You are going to call a meeting. You're going to look for people who really identify with you. Could even be advisors or your friends, depending on your level. If you're a big institution, you may have more people coming on board, and you want to really use the relationships of the people that you have to map out donors, to map out prospects. So map relationships from your contacts and your networks. And this is where we say your network is your network. This is why we have to keep going for conferences and creating networks, because then you can call them and help, and they can help you to map out as well. So map out relationships. How do we map out relationships? We map out by not necessarily asking you, who do you know? If you ask me, who do I know? Chances are I will actually not think of who I know. But if you ask me, which organizations have you worked for in the past? I would remember a couple of international organizations I've worked for. Maybe I'll remember I was a member somewhere. So it's by getting kind of a survey to find out from your networks, who do they know? Who are their connections? So ask questions, their memberships, their friends, who are their friends. Let them think, who is a friend that they think is influential, who is maybe in the corporate sector. So you can imagine if you have a team of like 10 people and everyone have this questionnaire and you're all thinking, chances are you end up, irrespective, excuse me, even if you are just starting and you're based in the community, you will find people, you will have a list of people that you can reach out to support you in one way or another. So that is what mapping is all about. Then you can map out organizations, of course, looking at the organizations that are doing similar work like yours. Look at who is funding their work, especially if now we are talking about feeding children, who is in this business and who is funding their work. So you map out and this is a potential donor. Research your past donors. If you're a big institution already with donors or with past donors, remember your donor is always, your current donor or your past donor is a prospect at any particular time. Anyone who has ever funded you, whether it's an individual who gave you 2,000 to start or a big grantor, is always a prospect donor. Because if you received a donation of 2,000 Kenya shillings today from someone, maybe to fund your lunch for 2-3 days for your children, for the vulnerable children, that person is likely to fund you more. If you keep informing them of what the impact their money made, how they transformed or they made, or even send a photo of smiling children who you fed, chances are next month they're going to send you 5,000 shillings. So you're always cultivating relationships, and you have to look at your donors as your prospect donors. For big grants, you're looking at an organization that gave you this maybe 10 million US dollars. You want to cultivate them to give you 50 million US dollars. So your donors, your current donors, your past donors are always the first people, actually, when I do donor mapping for organizations, the first thing I ask, who has ever funded your organization? That's a starting point. Those are people you always keep on loop. You keep informing them about what you're doing. You keep engaging them because they have a high chance, and this is based on research, of coming back and they understand your systems better, assuming that you did a good job, of course. Online tools. There are a couple of online tools, databases. I am almost certain everyone here knows Funds for NGO. I think it's one of the most famous online platform that we are using. But yes, online tools, again, you can go and do some research, find out who is in your space. And then one of the things I also say is, many people say Funds for NGO does not work. And maybe I can see reaction. Has it worked for anyone? But I've met so many people who say it doesn't work. And I think from my own perspective, I may be wrong, this is just my opinion, I think it's because we go there to look for calls for proposals and not necessarily to map out donors. Because if you're going to look for a call for proposal and you're going to write a proposal to a foundation that they have no clue of who you are, your probability of winning is very low. Can it happen? Can you get funding? Yes, you can. The probability, okay, let me say 1%. To be on the safe side, because I know it can happen. I have seen it happen. But the probability of we winning and getting funding to an organization that has never known you, you've never had any connection with, is always very low. And this is where I keep saying, this is where we waste a lot of time and energy. We are spending 70% of our time writing proposals. I have been there, I know. Yet these proposals, no one reads them, no one appreciates them at all, because they don't know you. They have no relationship with you. You give money to people that you know. So when we go to the funds for NGO, we can use it in a different way. We can identify this organization seems to have to be in my space. We seem to align. Then ask ourselves, how can we reach out to them and create a relationship? So that next time when they have a cycle for funding, we can apply and we'll have increased our chances of funding perhaps by 50%. If you agree with me, say yes. Let me see how many people agree with me. I said it's my opinion. If you agree with me, say yes. Makes sense. Thank you. Makes sense. I think so. Yes, someone said funds for NGO has learning opportunities. Very true. Very, very true. You can learn a lot actually. And I think a number of their trainings are even for free. So you can learn a lot. I'm very strong at people learning. There are many opportunities to learn. Please have a culture of learning. Wherever you find learning opportunities, just go there. You'll always learn something new. And I think it's a good thing. So yes, there's a lot. Yeah, many of you agree with me. So we are frustrated because we are using it in the wrong way. The other thing I want to say is this. Many times, by the time when you find a call for proposal in these funds for NGO, many times the reality is they have their own network. This grant already has their own network. And so they're funding, they're just putting it out there, but they're actually almost sending it to or it's like, I don't want to say, I think they are really focusing on their networks. They're interested in their network seeing it, but they don't want also to have a very closed system. Because like I was in a meeting the other day at I don't know whether there are some of you who are there. I think I met a couple of you in the Grant Makers Summit. So they want to fund people within their networks who they trust because they have a relationship with them, but they're also trying to open up to see if there may be, other organizations that may be interested in their work because they don't want to remain closed. So for us is to see that as an opportunity now because we're not in their network. We ask ourselves, how do I get to this network? Because they're still open to new people. So they still want to be known out there. So they have to be in the public. But for us, we think we should respond to this cause. So I think it's something that we need to really think about. So there are many, let me not stick so much into that, but let's move on. But there are many platforms. I've given you quite a number. Grants.gov is basically USAID. So I think the key thing is to also think around, am I qualified for this? I still remember working for an organization that was barely 3 years old and writing a proposal to USAID. Now, those who have done a proposal to USAID, you know the amount of work that is involved. Those S24, I don't even remember, the finance bit alone. And I did it alone, as in how practical is that? Really, it's wasting my time. That's the reality. So we need to also appreciate that we belong to different levels. So by the time you are responding to an organization, do some homework. And if you need someone to tell you either to go or not to go, call me. I'll tell you. I'm very good at that and telling you you're wasting time. I'll definitely tell you. I think there was a call earlier this year. I think I told 5 organizations to stop wasting their time. And not in a bad way. By the way, I say this with a lot of empathy because I have been there. And I say this with explanation. So if you have never received funding from them, you have not been in their space, you have no network, they are looking for an organization to fund. Like the last call, I think they were looking, the last call, I remember that particular one because it was focusing on Kenyan organizations. And I think it was, the ceiling was like that, 15 or 17 million US dollars. And then most of the organizations that are trying to apply, you have a budget or the maximum amount of money you've managed is like 10 million. That particular one who called me, there were 10 million Kenya shillings. So you don't need to waste your time on that. They will not fund you. That's the reality. And so at times it's tough to see ourselves. And that's what I'm saying. If you need someone to help you, an external eye, I'm more than willing to do that. Because we have to use our resources and our time well. We have UN partner portal. If you're not a member, I think it's almost open to everyone. I'm not sure, but you can check them out. Again, they release their calls in this portal, so you can always keep checking them out. We have development and the likes. But as I say, the key thing is to see how to get into the network. And that's why we need to invest our time in networks, in those conferences, in meetings, in government stakeholders meetings, because that's where they are. We have to look for them where they are, create relationships. Go for networking meetings with an agenda. Don't just wake up and go. Go with an agenda. Go with an agenda of saying, today I'm going to find UNICEF and talk to them. And the results are not immediate. I hope we remember that. The results take time. It's a relationship building. Okay, let me proceed. I hope we get it clear. I'm sharing this TUI fund for, I think grassroots organizations could benefit a lot from TUI fund. If you don't know them, I know a number of you here, I'm sure you know TUI fund, but it's a platform by a Kenyan, a lady. She's not paid me to advertise, but I just want to appreciate what she's doing, trying to match partners and donors. I think it's a platform you can check out. You can subscribe if you are a grassroots organization. I think mainly they focus on grassroots CBOs and all that, and you can check them out. Okay, now back to our donor mapping. I think I digressed a little bit, but I hope that was helpful. So when you're doing the donor mapping, we have now listed, I think we were at a point of listing. You've listed your many donors or prospects, that's what we call them. Then you want to research around these prospects so that we know how to get to them, so that we know how to create relationships with them. So we want to research to see where we can, where we can connect with them. Basically, we want to know as much as possible. If you're dealing with an individual, you want to know this individual as much as possible. It may not be possible to find out all this information, especially in our setup. I know in the probably Western world, it might be easier to get information about people much more than in our setup. But we want to find out as much as we can. So this is just a guide. We want to even know their children, their age, their careers, and everything. You may ask me why. But when you know someone, you know how to approach them. So you want to dig as much information, of course, considering ethics. You need to be also ethical in research. Don't get into people's personal things, but we want to know them as much as possible. So for example, if you're targeting, we call them the wealthy individuals, and you have identified, you want to know as much as possible about them, maybe which organizations they have been working for, how much money do they usually give, in what area, so that you see if you are likely to connect with them. What could make them really be interested in your work? You can find perhaps the interest could be through their children, maybe their child. For example, if you're running a sport, I think I saw someone who was saying they're looking for money for sports. So maybe a wealthy individual whose child plays that sport is likely to listen to you because there's a connection there. So this is a whole 2-hour module, but I'll leave it at that. You want to understand your prospects as much as possible. You want to understand their giving decisions, what really makes them give, what are their wealth indicators. Like I said, some of this information may not be very easy to get, but if they have ever given in another organization, you could find out how much do they give, so that by the time you're approaching them, you are confident. This is someone, if it's an individual, this is someone who I can invest some time to create a relationship. I can show up in a golf tournament to create a relationship with them. So first, we want to be almost sure that they are worth your investment. For foundations, of course, we want to be very clear on their mission. Never ignore that. What are their values? Your values may not match for many reasons, based on your religious backgrounds, based on your personal experiences, so you want to find out as much as possible their type of organization, their years of existence, their strategic priorities and all that, the grant cycles, very important. It's good to know the cycles of organizations so that you know the best time to go and ask for funding, what opportunities, what areas are they in, what are their past projects. Now, one of the things, even before I applied for grants for any organization, the one thing that I always am among the many things, I guess there are many things, but past projects funded is such a good indicator of the probability of them funding you. Just reading through what project they are funded in the past, you can just decide, I don't think my project is going to be funded by this guy. You can see a trend. You can see a trend. So that becomes very important. If you're about maybe to respond to a grant, please make sure you have all this information, you are clear, and you score yourself to the point you see, I think, I can win this. We'll be looking more into grant writing tomorrow and how to make that decision. This becomes very important as part of our donor mapping and understanding our mapping, our donors. And then once we have this information, we want to qualify donors. Remember, we are qualifying them for relationship building. So you use your research findings to rank your donors, and there are many criteria. If you go into the fundraising world, you'll find all kinds of criteria that have been developed to help you rank your donors. And currently we have also databases that are using fundraising, AI to rank for you. Some of them are very expensive, but they can actually, if you give them the data, they can rank for you and tell you, this one is likely to listen to you. Anyway, so I'm going to share with you a criteria that I think is easy, whether you have whatever technology you have, you just need to understand 3 things. So for every donor, and when I talk of donor, I'm talking of individuals, corporates, and foundations, and bilateral donors or institutions. You want to determine, based on the research you've done, you want to determine one thing, linkage. That's number 1. 3 things actually. 1, linkage. Who can make an introduction to you, to this donor? So I've identified an individual a very wealthy individual that we want to target, maybe for our upcoming campaign. So the question is, who has influence? It could be a volunteer in your organization, it could be a board member. It doesn't always have to be the CEO, the director, and that's why fundraising is everyone. So you have to sit down, even as a fundraising team, if you're a big organization, the fundraising team will sit down and ask themselves, who is likely to influence this person? Who is likely to reach out to this person? So linkage, if it's an institution, who has connections? And at times, it may require you to even partner with another organization. So like I've seen a situation where we partnered, I don't want to give this story, but I think the target was it UNICEF? And then we had to partner this organization. The strategy was to partner with another organization, a local organization that is already receiving funding from UNICEF. So those are some of the strategies that people use. So the minute you partner with this organization, you have a link to UNICEF. So the next time you get UNICEF funding, because if you have those relationships and they see you are good, then they're going to fund. So it's not as straight as it looks, but we have to be strategic. So linkage is key. Ability is the other factor that you have to think about. Does the prospect have the ability to make the donation? So when you're looking at abilities, maybe your project is so huge, you need a very huge donor. So then from the people that you've mapped out, remember we are the one driving the process. So you wanted to feed 3,000 children. Is this donor likely to have the ability to give us money for this, or do we want to break it? What is the ability? So that then you can know, maybe I need 5 of these kind of donors. So you need to have the ability, understand the abilities to fund. And generally, some donors, just the way they are set up, grantors will have very clear ceilings. They fund up to this amount. Some just do small funding. So you need to understand that. Basically, that's what we're talking about, the ability. If it's an individual, what is their capacity, so that you don't approach someone to ask for an amount of money that is ridiculous or does not make sense to them, or it is too little, on the other hand, either too much or too little. Interest is the other factor. So you want to ask yourself, what makes this, what would make this donor really fund my work? What is their interest? Where do we connect? Do they have an interest, first of all, in even philanthropy? Some people could have the money, but they're not interested. And even, even in your families, there are people who just, it's not about their ability. That's how they are. So if, especially when you're targeting individuals, you need to be very careful with their interest. Is it something that is going to be of interest to them? So anyway, so in a nutshell, we want to make sure that you're going to pursue organizations with interest, with linkage, with clear linkage, and with clear abilities. So So let's say, for example, you come across and maybe these corporates, they have the ability to fund you, they have the interest to be, so like now, if you're talking about feeding children, you're looking at, and you're focusing on corporate. So you're looking at organizations, perhaps maybe a corporate institution that is focusing on producing a product for children. So then you can show that they have an interest. There has to be somewhere you're meeting. It's not just any. So with that interest, you can see their vulnerability. Then you may find that you have no linkage. So how do you get to them? So then you invest your energy in thinking, how do we link up? Who can connect us? So once you have a clear linkage, you have, they have the ability, they have the interest, then you can now reach out to them. You could write an email and introduce yourself and start interesting them so that you start creating a relationship. So it's not just it's not just a corporate has the ability, we want to run to them. And for corporates especially, you remember they are in the business of making money. So they also have to see how do they benefit. So you have to think through all these things. By the time you're going for a meeting with them, you have thought through even how you're going to convince them, how they're going to make money, because at the end of the day, they want to make money, or how are you going to increase their branding, their awareness and branding and all that. I think I can leave it at that. So those are the three main factors. So yeah, so don't forget the LEA criteria: linkages, interest, and abilities. Okay, and I think, like I said, it can be a whole diploma of donor mapping, but I think I want to bring it to an end at that point. But just to encourage you to think through your donors, to take some time, think who can really fund you, and map them out, and then come up now with strategies of reaching out to them. So we now move to the next step of donor cultivation, which is phase 2. So phase 2, we are taking the donors that we have qualified, that they meet the LEA criteria. Those are the ones we are taking now to cultivation. So what happens in cultivation phase? So in cultivation phase, we are going to look at our research. We're going to search more about this donor with an intention of creating a relationship with them. And so we are going to be asking ourselves, how do we communicate to them? What is a communication channel that they appreciate? Who is communicating? Who is very important? Is it a relative? Is it the CEO of the organization? Who knows this person? What is the linkage? So you have to answer that question. Who is the most appropriate person to communicate? Who is the most appropriate person to even write that email, connecting you? There are times, we have to look for people to connect us, not because we can't write that email directly. I have found myself severally looking for someone and asking, please introduce me to so-and-so. I could easily write that email to that person, but I know chances are they will not even read my email because they don't know me. So I have to look for a link who is known to introduce me, so that now I increase my chances of moving to the next step of what I want. I hope we get the point. And that's why attending these meetings and conferences becomes very important, and networking with an intention. And let me give you an example. Allow me to just give you an example. So when you go for a networking session, identify who you want to network with. Maybe it's a donor that when you did your mapping, you realize they have interest. They are in our space, but I don't have a linkage. They have the ability, but I don't have a linkage. So when you go, make it an intention to make sure you introduce yourself and listen to them. You always give the other person, or rather, that's my strategy, and just ask, what are they doing? And especially if you know something about their program, how is this program? And so strike a conversation, talk, and then introduce yourself. That way, when you go back to your office, you have a starting point of how to communicate with them. And you can start with something very personalized. You have a starting point. Immediately before they forget you write an email. During this conference, we had a conversation. We talked about 1, 2, 3. If possible, say even something very personal about them. I like the way you discussed. Of course, keep it professional. I like the way you passed across when you shared about this and this and this. It really inspired me. I would really like to have a follow-up meeting to discuss 1, 2, 3 strategy. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. So let's be strategic. Communication channel. Who is communicating? What time do you communicate also matters. And time not necessarily 8 a.m. or 7 p.m., but time in terms of the season. It could be a season when they're so busy that they may not even be open to a lot of meetings. So you need to check their time. If it's an individual, you don't want to go during their birthdays. Knowing their birthdays is important because you can then start by saying happy birthday, but also need to be careful so that it's the right time. Where do you meet? Are you meeting in your office? Which is the most appropriate? It's not about you, it's about your prospect donor. Which is their spaces? Where do they like? Do you need to go to where they are? Do you need to go for that sports event where they are and have the meeting there? What is in the message? What message are you passing across? What exactly are you doing? And the key message here is when you're starting a relationship, you don't start by asking. You start by creating a relationship. So be very strategic. You are not asking for a meeting, we want you to fund our work. We are asking for a meeting to get to know each other, to get to know how, what are some of your programs in Kenya? How can we be part of it? So it's purely creating relationship. So when you're starting, don't start by asking. So yeah, so those are some of the things that you need to research and make sure that you have them in mind. And some of the strategies for relationship building, basically, I think we know them. I'll not go into details. Again, this can be a whole diploma about it. But storytelling, as simple as it looks, storytelling is one of the most powerful engagement strategies that we have. And I think it's easy to do with the technology that we have right now. It's easy to come up with a story and tell ChatGPT to help you shape it up. So key thing, storytelling, as long as the story is, of course, you need to give stories that elicit emotions. You need to give stories that are personalized. I have a whole session around this, but let me just try and capture a few things. Story, if you want it to really capture the attention of people, make sure it's about an individual. Stop, don't focus so much on, the general community enjoyed this and they liked this and we did this. Pick an individual, talk about that individual. Pick an individual, let them, if they give consent, they can talk on camera, the better. They can do a short video and give their story, their impact story. So storytelling is powerful, extremely powerful. Share these stories with your donors. They don't even need to ask. If it's a donor funding you, share. If you are looking for funding, share it. Of course, you have to observe all the ethical considerations, which are not going into it. Don't get into trouble. So if you want to focus on storytelling, we've seen very many successful stories. I think Shofco, Shofco, perhaps some of you may know Shofco, you can check them out, has been very good in storytelling. There are a couple of organizations that have just blown because of the stories they're telling every day on the social media. Very simple stories that can go very fast. So in your story, just make sure you're capturing a problem, a solution, and the impact. And that is it. Engagement opportunities. Invite donors to your spaces, whether they are, when I say prospect donors, people who you want to fund your work, or they are past donors or they are current donors. Engage them. Invite them into your meetings, invite them into your trainings, invite them into what you're doing at the community level. As long as you have a function, get a way of convincing them to come. If you have a feeding program for children in the community, call people, the people who are funding you, for example, paying school fees, even if it's 1,000 shillings, call them to come and be part of your closing day, prize giving day, recognize them. So engagement at high level, at low level, whatever level, engagement opportunities. Think about how to get them involved in your work. Hold in-person meetings. I know you're in the space of a lot of online meetings, but we know that in-person meetings, expensive as they are and everything, but they have, especially when it comes to your donors, like what we call our major donors, which I want to go into, you need to give them personalized attention. You need to really, think through how to communicate with them and go to where they are in many cases and hold meetings with them, update them, regular updates. Like I said, you don't have to wait for end of report. I know grants, most of them are very structured, but even without them, having to ask for a report, you can always update on what is happening. You can share a story anytime. You can share a video, even if it's not a requirement in your reporting requirements. But if you really want to be seen, you have to go out of your way and share these updates, individuals, with people that you think can fund you, with organizations that you have. You could just do an email and talk and say how we met and everything. And I just wanted to share with you some of the work, some of the one of our success story that we have. So we have to really think how to keep them updated. Thank you notes are very simple, very extremely simple, but very powerful. Just a thank you note. Someone sends you some amount of money, especially individuals, when it comes to individual donors. Please say thank you. One of your board members supports you in something. Go out of your way and do a thank you note. Personally, I like the actual thank you note, not even online one, not the digital one. That's what I mean. The physical. Just a simple thank you, if possible, crafted by your hand. It can really make actually someone give you three more times. So thank you notes have been drawn from research, have been shown, the physical thank you notes have actually been shown to be very effective when it comes to individual donors, extremely powerful. People tend to really feel appreciated. And thank you notes, birthday cards, and such kind of things. Not actual gifts. Actually, research shows when you give someone a gift, they're not as, they feel like you're trying to buy them. But when you just do a thank you just want them to say thank you, it can do wonders for you. Donor recognition, of course, is key. We'll look, I think, more into this on Thursday, but donor recognition is about recognizing them in any way, as long as the donor is comfortable. So don't put people on Facebook saying how they supported you if if you don't have consent from them to do that. Recognizing them in your website, recognizing them during events, it's always important in whichever way they are comfortable. Make sure you do donor recognition. Social media and online presence is a very strong engagement strategy also that you can use. Go to those donors that you've mapped out and start commenting in their walls, in their LinkedIn. And you should be in LinkedIn if you're not in LinkedIn and you are here. Go, that's where they are. Start commenting in their work. Start, when they post something, say something. You can even share your own version. Please don't share your stories there, but engage them. You never know. Personally, I've made a lot of connections through LinkedIn by just commenting on someone's work, just appreciating what they have done. We are human beings. That's how we connect. So social media, online presence is a powerful tool that we also need to use to get yourself known there, posting on relevant things, saying what you are doing, demonstrating your impact, but also reaching out to other like-minded organizations that you want to partner with. Just say something positive about them. And before you know it, you start a conversation and then you come together and, you create something. It happens a lot of times. So that's what I have time to share in as far as engagement strategies are concerned. Nothing out of the ordinary. What makes it innovative is how you do it. The regular updates will always remain as a strategy, but how do you update them? So those are some of the things that now you have to go deeper and think around how to go about it in a way that really makes someone feel appreciated. So focus on long-term relationships, not on the immediate gift. Focus when you get new donors, prospects, focus on relationships, focus on just getting to, we really have to shift our minds, focusing on relationships, focusing on having to a point where, you have really this relationship with an organization without asking. The point now when you really need money, they'll not find it insulting, or they'll be more than willing if they can to fund you. So build relationships. Remember that the picture, the design, graphic I showed you, by, I think she's called Michelle Benson, if I'm not wrong. Yes. Yeah. Just a tip I want to share of something I learned in one of these conferences that I attend. So I learned about this effect of the IKEA effect. I've always known the IKEA effect, but I never thought how we can also apply it in our fundraising work. And the IKEA effect basically says that people place higher value on things they helped to build or create. If I am involved in creating something, no matter how poor or bad that thing is, I'm going to place a very high value on it. That's why I value my book very highly, irrespective of what you think, anyway. But that's the point. The point is we give value to the things that we work on. So how can we use this strategy or this idea? So you can see it doesn't matter how crappy the idea is, as long as I did it, it's a good idea. So one of the things that we need to do, basically this strategy is all about co-creation. Invite your prospect donors to co-create. Come up, don't take to them a full idea. Tell them, let's come up with an idea together. So you want my children, I want to feed my 3,000 children. I go to Nestle company and we say, how can we feed these children together? How would we do it? Let's think about it together. So we'll create a partnership, because as long as they are part of that creation, they become part of it. They own it better. They're not going to look at it like, that was your idea, we don't like that idea, but now we've created it together. And co-creation is actually becoming a very common approach among grant makers right now. Quite a number of grantors are actually embracing it, co-creation. We create something together, we design the project together, then we fund. And that's why I'm saying networks, because you'll be responding to a call for proposal and I've seen quite a number of people doing it. You are responding to them, but the reality is they're already co-creating within their networks. So anyway, so how do you reach out to organizations and address people as they would like to be viewed? So if I want to co-create something with you, I'm going to address you. And that's where research comes in, because I need to know what you do. So if you're an innovative company, for example, a corporate, you're in innovation, or even the case of food company, you need to address them the way they like to be addressed. So you talk about how you like their food products and how their food products have helped, how you have been using them. So you have to. They want to be seen as an authority in that space. If people want to be seen as an authority in innovation, then you want to appreciate that. We really appreciate your innovation, and I think we really benefit from your ideas and your skills and how you are innovative. You've done 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'd like to come together with you and create this together. We have also done 1, 2, because you also have to be bringing something on board. But it's not just writing an email. We would like to have a meeting with you to partner with you. It doesn't make someone want even to, it doesn't excite you. I guess that's what I want to say. So we have to think outside. That's the innovation. The email will always be one way of reaching out, but how is that email written? What is the message in it? So what will make me read it and want to have a meeting with you? That is what matters. It's a message that matters most. So what I'm trying to say is that we know the strategies that we should be using. When we post the question of the strategies in our survey, all the strategies are there. So the problem is not knowing the strategy. It's just, I think, going a little bit, taking more time to understand how to use them more effectively. And I hope from what I have shared, you've learned 1 or 2 things. I think that's the key thing. So in summary, when you think of your nonprofit, I always say my opinion, that think about it like a business. There's really not much difference, especially when you're growing and starting. Look at it as a business. And I think even for the big organizations, they have learned how to look at the organizations, the very successful ones, as a business. They understand branding. You will find them everywhere. Branded, in social media, in the mainstream media. So branding, we may not start there, but we have a platform. We have social media. If we do not have that capacity, if you have the capacity, think about how to brand yourself. And branding is about what you want to be known for. It's not necessarily the colors and everything and all that, but what do you want to be known for? I want when people think of this organization, they think of this. I want when you see Lucy, you think of fundraising. That's branding. That's what branding is all about. I'm not an expert in branding, but the basic I know is you need to think how you want to be known and invest your resources as an organization in that. You need to build teams, definitely, just like any business. You can't be successful you will always want to build a team if you want to be successful. I think just like business, you need to think about building teams that work for you. You need to view your donor almost like your client. How you create if you want me to buy your product, I must have a relationship with you. Yeah, maybe for buying it may not take long, but unfortunately in fundraising it takes long, but it's a relationship. In many cases, we buy because of some level of relationship, especially when it comes to investing in things like a lot of money and all that. So, but the idea is think around them as a client, because they're also looking into investing in people that have the structures. You know, they're looking for quality. So the same way when you're buying something as a customer, you're looking for quality. There are things you're looking at. It's the same thing even for the donor. So and that's why you have to put your structures in place and all that, so that you're attractive to the donor, so that you are able to attract these donors. You need to grow your portfolio. I keep saying this. It doesn't matter whether you're one person or 10 people or 50. And the good thing with the big organizations, you already have a strong portfolio, so you are lucky. If you're starting, you have to grow your portfolio. No one is going to fund an idea. You have to really think, how do I grow this portfolio? One of the things we'll be talking about tomorrow is local fundraising, not in details, but slightly before I go deep into grant writing. How do you come up with self-sustaining approaches, especially when you're starting, because you have to get your footing before you get to start, getting a lot of grants and all that. Building your systems and relationships. So if you think about your organization almost like a business, and knowing that there's no business that gives you profit on day one, it's the same thing. It takes time. It takes a process of building, of growing. So you have to put your effort on growing, and then eventually money flows. Remember, money is a byproduct of your relationships, your impact. The same thing that money in a business is a product of all the effort that you put. And that's why we keep saying it takes time for a business to break even. Of course, there are always exceptions, there are always outliers in any research. You'll find some people open and they make massive amount of money. But we are looking at the average, within the normal, it was what percent? I don't remember, that normal curve that we have learned in research. So let's invest more energy in being fundable and findable. If you never heard anything from me today, please invest more of your energy in being fundable and findable. Then the money will follow. And with that, for those who are fundraisers in the room, one of the books that I love reading a lot about fundraising is called Achieving Excellence in Fundraising. It's a very, very informative book. For those who want to pursue fundraising now as a career, I know we are a mix of people. So this is for those who are interested, or those who want to be certified as fundraisers. I'm looking for a team. We are only 2 in Kenya, so I am campaigning for more and more people to join this team so that we can work together to elevate our fundraising environment in Kenya. There's a lot of work to be done at policy level also, because fundraising is extremely new. If you go out there, it's when you appreciate what fundraising is all about, but it's extremely new in our setup. And so I hope to get a big muscle of people that we can work with and see what we can do in this space. So yes, I'm welcoming you to join me if you are interested in making it a career. That's not for everyone. To end, we have a donor mapping tool that is pretty simple. We'll be sharing with you as a toolkit of the many things that we'll share by the end of this session. But I think even it's available on our website. It's free. You can download it and see, and it will help you to think through your donor mapping process.